When I drew nigh the nameless city, I knew it was accursed. I was travelling in a parched and terrible valley under the moon, and afar I saw it protruding uncannily above the sands, as parts of a corpse may protrude from an ill-made grave. Fear spoke from the age-worn stones of this hoary survivor of the deluge, this great-grandmother of the eldest pyramid, and a viewless aura repelled me and bade me retreat from antique and sinister secrets that no man should see, and no man else had ever dared to see. Remote in the desert of Arabia lies the nameless city, crumbling and inarticulate, its low walls nearly hidden by the sands of uncounted ages. It must have been thus before the first stones of Memphis were laid, and while the bricks of Babylon were yet unbaked. There is no legend so old as to give it a name, or to recall that it was ever alive, but it is told of in whispers around campfires, and muttered about by grandams in the tents of sheikhs, so that all the tribes shun it, without wholly knowing why. It was of this place that Abdul al-Hazred, the mad poet, dreamed, on the night before he sang his unexplainable couplet. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons even death may die. I should have known that the Arabs had good reason for shunning the nameless city, the city told of in strange tales, but seen by no living man. Yet I defied them, and went into the untrodden waste with my camel. I alone have seen it, and that is why no other face bears such hideous lines of fear as mine.
Sure. He says, well, you take him then. So I did.
Does these plates that you have, do they have the, drawing that he drew and it has like the alligator or snake head or something like that? Does any of your plates have that on it?
No. No, just the drawing that he made of the mummies has it on.
Right.
It's not on any of the plates. If you ever come down here, I'll show you pictures of all these things.
Yeah, I'd like to see pictures of those plates you have, because the plate, one of the plates that was on in the other box does have one of them dragon heads or alligator or snake, whatever it is, and it has the exact markings on it that he's drawn on the male mummy.
Oh, yeah.
So
one of my plates has a scorpion on it, but that's his closest.
Okay.
I ain't even seen David Blaine or no one like that do. See nothing like that. And I goes to bed one night, and I wake up paralysed, can't move. There's white lights everywhere, bright lights everywhere. My body lifts up. Just before I hit the ceiling, everything goes black. Next thing I can remember, falling back into my bed on top of the covers, and there's something moving about in my back. I can still feel it now sometimes.
It's still there?
Yeah. Feels all hot round here as well.
You mentioned on the phone some kind of life form, like a symbiont out of the TV series Stargate.
Yeah, but bigger. And yeah, probably more than one entity.
Filming? Right, what we're doing in the room at the moment is checking for background RF radiation from Wi-Fi, what have you. We're on sensitivity 6. We're using a Allen Broadband Zap checker from the States, which we use to basically try and find if we have implants in the body which transmit signals. And that is off the scale, the machine is vibrating. Can you feel that, Dave? Yeah, okay, we'll pull away. We're back down to 20 again. Back up to the spine. Way up to 100. Let's drop it down to sensitivity 6.
We go up and then down the body?
Up. You want to go down the body. That's on sensitivity 8.
Yeah, all very sinister. But this thing that went into me was like a sort of, a bit like on Stargate, like a sort of dandelion shaped sort of the head and the bottom, some kind of weird creature, and another thing went down my nose again with the dark energy. So it could enter like
describe those things?
Centipede, reptilian kind of sort of snake-like.
Snake-like.
I don't want to come into the cliches.
Okay.
But this was like very similar to like a dandelion looking thing, and the other thing like a sort of dinosaur head, but like sort of centipede with lots of legs, and very nasty creature. Yeah, crazy, not very nice, no. Kind of went down on me after, yeah.
Years ago, many years ago, in fact, 1972, I was sitting at my desk at about 4:30 in the morning at the headquarters of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, arranging the information that had come in over the last 24 hours into a logical order so that we could prepare a briefing for the Admiral and his staff, which would take place later that morning. Among the papers I found on my desk was a document entitled Operation Majority, and it was not the entire paperwork involving this operation, but was merely a synopsis of the operation and projects contained under it. One of these projects was called Project Red Light. The purpose, according to this document, was to back-engineer captured extraterrestrial technology for adaptation into the United States space program. Now, I have since come to believe that the extraterrestrial portion of all of this is nonsense, but that the technology is real. I believe that many of us were shown these documents over the years so that later we would talk about it. I mean, how can you keep the existence of extraterrestrials, if they were real, a secret? And how could anyone keep quiet knowing that they had seen documentation, official government documents labeled top secret, that expressed that these extraterrestrials were real and had visited this Earth? I wanted to know just how true all of this was, and I began a program of research to find out if extraterrestrials were real. The first thing I did was collect every bit of documentation that I could find, both from the Freedom of Information Act, from the research of others, from books that had been printed on the subject of UFOs, and of course through my network of friends in the intelligence community. What I discovered was amazing. What I discovered, ladies and gentlemen, is that there has been a plan in existence since about 1917, and probably before that, to create an artificial extraterrestrial threat to this Earth in order to create a one-world totalitarian socialist government. One of the first documents that I found in my search was this one, the Imperial Japanese Mission 1917, a record of the reception throughout the United States of the special mission headed by Viscount Ishii. And when the Imperial Japanese Mission was in New York City, they had a dinner, and some pretty famous people spoke at this dinner. One of them was John Dewey. John Dewey is the father of our failing, disastrous public education system. Here's what he said. Listen very carefully. John Dewey, professor of philosophy in Columbia University, who was the next speaker, was listened to with great intentness. He said, quote, Someone remarked that the best way to unite all the nations on this globe would be an attack from some other planet. In the face of such an alien enemy, people would respond with a sense of their unity of interest and purpose. Unquote. Now, bear in mind, folks, that's 1917. One of the next documents that I found, and I found quite a few, but one that's pretty important, is called a Report from Iron Mountain, The Probability and Desirability of Permanent Peace. Now, I encourage you to find this book, wherever you can find it. I don't know where you can get it, but find it. Page 66. Credibility, in fact, lies at the heart of the problem of developing a political substitute for war. This is where the space race proposals, in many ways so well suited as economic substitutes for war, fall short. The most ambitious and unrealistic space project cannot of itself generate a believable external menace. It has been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace, etc., by uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. Experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-our-world invasion threat. And it continues on another page. Nevertheless, an effective political substitute for war would require alternate enemies, some of which might seem equally far-fetched in the context of the current war system. It may be, for instance, that gross pollution of the environment can eventually replace the possibility of mass destruction by nuclear weapons as the principal substitute for war. Are you beginning to get the message, folks? Poisoning of the air and of the principal sources of food and water supply is already well advanced, and at first glance would seem promising in this respect. It constitutes a threat that can be dealt with only through social organization and political power. But from present indications, it will be a generation to a generation and a half before environmental pollution, however severe, will be sufficiently menacing on a global scale to offer a possible basis for a solution. However unlikely some of the possible alternate enemies we have mentioned may seem, we must emphasize that one must be found of credible quality and magnitude if a transition to peace is ever to come about without social disintegration. It is more probable, in our judgment, that such a threat will have to be invented rather than developed from unknown conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, they have created so many alternate enemies in order to bring about their one-world totalitarian socialist state that we don't know which enemy to believe is real or is false, or whether to just toss them all out on their ears. And I think that that is probably going to be the best solution. Disarmament is no accident. All of these bills in Congress to take away our weapons is no accident. The intentional environmental pollution of our lakes, rivers, streams, oceans, forests, everything is no accident, as you just heard. These things were planned many, many years ago.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting, and I want to share this with everybody. For those who really don't understand the history, it's hard to really get your arms around this stuff, and so I would just want to paint a current picture of the history for you. If you go to YouTube right now, guys, there's a YouTube channel called Balfour 100, and right there right now you'll find, under the title Balfour 100, you'll find an exclusive interview with Lord Rothschild on his family's involvement in the 1917 Balfour Declaration, the 67 words which led to the creation of the State of Israel. And I'm going to play some of that for you right now, because you're going to hear in Lord Rothschild's own words just how very proud they are of these facts of which we've been speaking.
November the 2nd, 1917. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
So it's possibly the most famous letter in modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words: Dear Lord Rothschild. Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter?
It's an interesting question, because he was really interested in ornithology, although he became interested in Zionism. I think the reason was this, that it was primarily a movement from Eastern Europe, but they didn't clarify who was in charge of that movement. And in addition, it was, after all, in Great Britain. So they felt that the Rothschild family should be the one to whom it was addressed. And Walter was Lord Rothschild, and he was a Zionist. And those really are the background reasons.
All right, I'll pause it there. You know, I watched this in its entirety just probably a week ago now, and it's really fascinating because it's just gushing. It's just this conversation between these two, and Rothschild is very proud of the history. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Do you want to hear any more from this, or do you just want to discuss the importance of the Balfour Declaration? Because it really is the document that propelled us into a world war.
Sure, and by the way, that letter, I have that in chapter 10 of the book. The rest of the letter goes, His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine or the rights and political status shown and enjoyed by Jews in any other country.
Well, they forgot about that part now, haven't they?
Yes, they did.
The media has misled the public into believing that Queen Elizabeth II is a symbolic ceremonial figurehead with little or no real power, that she is a cold but harmless old relic who passes her time sipping tea at the palace. Nothing could be further from the truth. As British monarch, Queen Elizabeth II is the wealthiest, most powerful person on earth. She embodies the crown and supreme world power. Presidents of the United States are forbidden any title of nobility and are subservient to the monarch. The U.S. President is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces based at Camp David, which is known to insiders as Camp King David. Prime Ministers in Commonwealth nations like Canada and Australia are also subservient representatives of the British King or Queen. They are her spokesmen. The Governor-Generals of the Queen's Commonwealth nations represent and exercise the Queen's power on her behalf. What the general public doesn't realize is that their leaders are only representatives of the monarch and do not possess the power. They exercise the power. They do not reign, they rule. The monarch, on the other hand, reigns but does not rule, possesses the power but does not exercise it. By delegating her powers instead of exercising her powers, the Queen is left safely outside and above the conflicts and divisions of the political process. She is protected from becoming a target of political hostilities. Meanwhile, the general public is kept in the dark about the true powers that the Queen actually possesses, powers that she delegates but has not yet chosen to exercise. So what exactly are these powers that the Queen possesses but has not chosen to exercise? Her powers include the power to choose the Prime Minister and to dismiss the Prime Minister through her Governor-General, the power to dismiss ministers and the government, the power to dissolve Parliament and call new elections, the power to refuse legislation passed by Parliament, the power to command the armed forces and raise a personal militia. She has the power to read confidential government documents and intelligence reports, the power to declare a state of emergency and issue proclamations. She has the power to call elections and enact laws in Her Majesty's name. Few people realize that not a single law is passed without the Queen's consent. She has the power to exercise Crown prerogatives, which means the Queen can declare war through her Prime Minister without even the agreement of Parliament. She has the power to grant and bestow titles and honors like Sir, the power to pardon convicted criminals. So why has the Queen been allowed to legally possess all of these supreme powers? For the sake of tradition? What exactly is the meaning of the term the Crown? The Crown is defined as executive powers exercised in the name of the monarch. The actual crown itself, worn by the monarch, is a symbol of the Queen's executive powers. The Parliamentary Oaths Act of 1866 requires all leaders of 54 Commonwealth nations to swear an oath of loyalty to the Queen, not to the people who elected them. I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, her heirs and successors according to law, so help me God. Those who do not swear allegiance to the Queen are deemed unfit for office, including the Prime Minister, police, military, judges, legislators, lawyers, and public servants. New citizens to the Queen's Commonwealth nations must swear allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen. Public land in the Queen's colonies like Canada is called Crown land and includes Aboriginal land. Government corporations are called Crown corporations. The Central Bank of Canada and the Canadian Mint are Crown corporations independent of most government controls.
Neither Canada nor Australia, two huge and independent countries in their own right, has dispensed with her services as their head of state.
President Bush is the president of a privately owned company, privately owned, out of England. And you need to understand words and terms.
Hi, my name is Tammy Pepperman. I'm here today to talk about the current situation that I'm going through in my life involving low-intensity conflict issues that everybody is fully aware of by now. What happened was recently, as of a month and a half ago, we started indicting the IRS. What we had found was the IRS acting as also fiduciary in trust is 1/5 in total Northern Holdings and Trust. And we found this out by accident. The IRS was garnishing a Caterpillar retirement account of one of my clients. And when I went to look at the portfolio of Northern Holdings and Trust, here it is. They're the Internal Revenue Service. The Internal Revenue Service is a service, and it's in 5 parts. Southern Holdings and Trust is another portion of the Internal Revenue Service. Bridges Trust is the Inland Revenue Service in the UK, throughout Canada and other countries. And what we had done was we filed a motion for equitable estoppel against the IRS, against them, and dissented to the IRS being an agent by estoppel or agency by estoppel. An agency by estoppel is one that is created by the mechanism of law. So basically the IRS is a fiction of law. They do no thing anymore as to taxation. Taxation under the Inland Revenue Service used to be a stamp tax. You've noticed that there is no such thing any longer. And what they had done in this particular instance, and what they're doing, they were also garnishing a Social Security account. Social Security cannot be used in any legal process according to the Social Security Act. When I found that they were garnishing themselves, okay, they're the fiduciary and trust. They are garnishing the account as a different agency, which they are not. They are only a different agency by appearance, being an agency by estoppel. When we filed the motion for equitable estoppel, we also put an injunction down, and within 24 hours, the IRS lifted or appeared to lift the lien against my client and against the Caterpillar retirement and Social Security account. They did not actually lift that. This was not filed with the Register of Deeds. They did not want this to go to a court process or through a court of law or equity, according to what they wanted. We went ahead and filed. We had to open up another court case, and we filed the motion for equitable estoppel along with the Register of Deeds to pull the deed. Everybody has to pull the deeds, okay? We've done this against code enforcement in South Carolina as well. This case was in Peoria County, Illinois. In South Carolina, we had the code enforcement coming up against our client. We dissented to the agency by estoppel. They have no authority unless you consent to their authority. You have to view them as an authority and accept their authority, and then they can do whatever they want to you. If you dissent, and this is according to their own law under Bouvier maxims of law, you consent unless you dissent. That means you have to expressly dissent. And this goes along with the Cestui Que Vie Act as well. The Cestui Que Vie Act says that you can't not just simply write into the Secretary of State or whatever everybody else is doing and pull your birth bond or whatever else. You have to have an action, and this has to be a bona fide court action. You compel the judge to be there by admitting evidence onto court record, or you can do a motion to compel judicial boundaries. But you have to maintain an actual court of record of law, not legal process, not statute, not code, and you have to dissent to their authority. Once you dissent, you are no longer consenting. Your intentions are known, and they cannot maintain you any longer as a prisoner of war, which is what's going on. In 1929, our government went into bankruptcy. At that time, Geneva Convention of 1929 said, okay, corporations will be your government. They will offer you the benefits of living under their authority, but you have to accept their authority. That's no longer the case. If you dissent, you are your own government. It is not self-representation or representation. You are the authority. You must dissent, and you must dissent now. This is the ultimate patriotism. You need to be patriotic to yourself, not to the golden calf. I need to sign out at this time, but if you have any questions, please email me, tamikay23@hotmail.com. Thank you.
they took out in the good times. Now what the banks are doing is starting to reel the fishing line in, because as they go bankrupt, companies and individuals, the banks get the real wealth, the property, the land, the resources that they had signed to them for lending merely figures on a screen. Now this economic cycle of fishing line out, fishing line back, lots of units in circulation, pull them in, has been going on for centuries. And what it's done, it's stolen and accumulated the real wealth of the world in the hands of the few.
Nor are they seeing a redistribution of fraudulently obtained assets. This is especially clear in the case of the Lehman Shockwave documentary. Evidence proves the bloodline families created $23 trillion through fraud and used that money to buy up assets worldwide that had been turned into bargains by the financial collapse they had engineered.
Prove that tonight. So Congress is just as tied into the military-industrial complex as Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and the others are. Who is the main representative in our government of the people? Congress, right? If they own Congress, we don't have a vote or a voice anymore, and that's the idea.